tell me, why do females, or why do we need the female equivalent of Jordan Peterson?
Well, because just as much as men and boys behave badly and have made a mess of things in their own lives and engage in destructive behaviors to self and to community, so do women and girls. I mean, we're two sides of the same coin. And women, however, have a really hard time with accountability. And I don't think this is even close to being controversial. I would have a problem. I don't, like women always do this thing where like there's clearly something the matter or something that you don't like, but instead of being like, actually, no, we're like, no, it's fine. It's great. It's not great. Like I did this recently. Okay. I did it just a few weeks ago to somebody who I was like, I completely lied and said, yes, I'm definitely going to do this. And I was like, I had no intention of doing it, but I couldn't bring myself to be like, hell no, you're a total freak. I don't want to do this. So we have a hard time overcoming sort of niceties. But female behavior can be incredibly toxic. And the only figure that can get away with that kind of accountability with other women is the kind of like ethnic grandma, which is what I always, the ethnic grandma is the only woman who can basically slap you around the face and be like, stop being a hoe, which to me is the equivalent of clean your room. And will be kind of girls and women just kind of automatic, like we still have some kind of like evolutionary programming to listen to the grandma, but in society grandmas have no position. In Anglo society, grandmas are not the center of the family the way they used to be, and this is a very bad thing. So Jordan Peterson he spoke very bluntly, very plainly and very directly, some harsh truths to men and boys, which is hilarious that feminists and the idiot progressives were running around talking about him like he was bad for women. I'm like, he's teaching young men how to be good for women. Like, what are you talking about? But anyway, yeah. And because like the all of the cultural discourse is so weighted so heavily toward extremely young people, children and teens and people in their early 20s, like the prime of your sexual life.
Mm-hmm.
And the stories and the wisdom of the older people are like gone. And if anything, we have women who are in their 50s and 60s and older, horrifyingly, with their boobs out and like gyrating around like Madonna, like an absolute succubus. Like, this is not the order of things. Like, we need to restore the natural order of things. Like, to each season, there's a season of everyone's life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great to be the young maiden, and it's great to be the gorgeous young woman. But there needs to be a role model to prepare you for a kind of a dignified transition into the older stages of your life where it's no longer appropriate to be a hoe, for example. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you might want to get railed by 1,000 guys in a night when you're 24. I mean, maybe, but when you're 54 or 64 or 74 and your grandkids are going to be like, Grandma, what did you do in the 2020s? I mean, that's not going to be a conversation you want to have. Like, it's really not. So the older women have kind of ceded their natural authority. And it's funny because when I wrote the piece about female Jordan Peterson, lots of people were giving really great suggestions of women who, really accomplished female writers and public intellectuals like Louise Perry and Mary Harrington
Helen Joyce
and Helen Joyce and all. Like there's plenty of bright, brilliant, heterodox, anti-woke women around. There's plenty of them. But I think they're all too young. I think it needs to be a woman of a certain age and gravitas. Camille Paglia seems to have vanished, which is sad because I loved her. I love her so much, even though she was very left wing and almost like a libertine in the 90s. But she talked about her Italian grandmother and her Italian roots and how women did women thing and men did men thing, and it was fine.
She was amazing. She was thinking way faster than she could speak. and it was visible in the
Yeah.
way that she was sort of presenting herself. It was like,
Yes.
what the hell has she just said? Like, rewind that for a
She's
moment.
absolutely brilliant. Yeah, she was brilliant. I hope she still is. I don't know what she's doing these days.
Yeah, I think the problem is that I see why females would need Jordan Peterson. I doubt that we are going to get one, and
Why is
and
that?
and there's few reasons for that. There is the very uncomfortable to the feminist fact that just the sheer distribution of intelligence is differently placed with women. So we have way more we have way less really stupid women and
Okay.
way less geniuses. So females are just a bit more evenly distributed. Whilst men, you've got more geniuses,
Wow.
more complete losers, and their curve of intelligence is essentially a little bit different.
I did not know that.
It's thought to be biological. There seems to be within the evolution, there seems to be something in male development that they might be a little bit more vulnerable to in vitro environment, and some small adjustments might just mean that they just fail to sort of live up to their potential or develop appropriately. That's the gist that I got from David Geary, who worked and looked at that. So we've got that, just the unequal distribution of geniuses. Jordan Peterson is extremely intelligent,
Yeah.
but then also a lot of women will become mothers,
Yeah.
and it is very, very difficult to be really, really out there
Yeah.
career wise and stay rooted in the family at the same time. Like the timing of these sort of big life events, of big life stages, has to be thought through.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm seeing it now. I've started this podcast essentially before I found out, a couple of weeks before I found out that I was pregnant again.
Oh,
And it was
wow.
like, yes, I'm really happy, and it was amazing. But the worst time to potentially start a
Right.
podcast,
Right.
because
Yeah.
throughout the entire thing, I was either like, I either had morning sickness, or that I could hardly sit
Yeah.
on the seat because I was uncomfortable and just massive in the summer. So, you know, where would the female Jordan Peterson emerge from?
Well, that's why I
Because,
say it needs to be an older woman.
yeah,
And also, so when I have a son, one child, and when he was born, it gave me the most incredible surge of confidence and
mm-hmm,
like a sense of, and I mean, I was never like lacking in confidence in an extreme way. But what I felt was like suddenly I felt extremely competent and extremely almost like brave. Like I was like,
yeah,
I am a mother now. Therefore, I felt like I was in charge of the world essentially, because I was.
yeah,
That's what a mother is. A mother is in charge of her world, in charge of the world of her child and children, and it's the most powerful job anyone can ever have, and it's the most important job anyone can ever have. So I really felt that. I felt that in my bones. I had none of this sort of like, oh, I'm never going to get to be a corporate drone. Or like I had the opposite. I was like, I can take anything on because I've got this little newborn. Now I have a replacement in this silly little dog. He's my newborn now. I really felt like I could take on the world because it just filled me with strength. But yeah, when they're little, it's like they take up, all of your mental energy. And even when they're teens, like, things be ticking along. And then suddenly you're like, oh wait, now I have to really spend all of my brain power thinking about this problem that impacts my son, not me. But you kind of move through these stages, and the female Jordan Peterson has to be a mother. It has to be like, I really do think that, like, because it gives you the gravitas necessary. Like, you don't need a degree to be the female
mm,
Jordan Peterson. You don't need to have worked at Harvard to be the female Jordan Peterson. Maybe it's actually, who could be it? Maybe Roseanne. Roseanne's a little too, she's a little too much of a comedian. Roseanne, the American actress who now has a podcast. She's hilarious.
yeah,
But, the insight and the wisdom of older women was always part of society. I mean, it might have been kind of behind closed doors, but isn't it odd that we live in this world that was absolutely dominated by feminism and liberal values and equality and freedom for the sexes, and yet older women are totally marginalized, and younger women, live in a rape culture where they don't know how to handle aggressive men. Nobody seems to know how to handle aggressive men. So, what exactly has feminism and equality and liberal values done for women? Like
Well,
older women in Pakistan have a lot more influence and power than they do here. We say we're so, well, look at us, we're so, our Western values. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to live in Pakistan. I don't want to live under an actual patriarchy. But to think that women don't have a role and huge power, and even in those more traditional societies, is so dumb.
I don't know what is it about females and sort of taking feedback, maybe not even taking feedback, being called to responsibility, because young men seemed to be very fertile soil to spread Jordan Peterson message around, right? But when you try and give advice to young women, the petulant vitriol that you get back is quite extraordinary. And on my podcast, I've covered the falling birth rates, which is one of my big sort of worries and concerns.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't tell you the comments that I get from women accusing me of wanting to bring some sort of modern version of Handmaid's Tale. And it's like, what do you think is it about young women when we are young, are we just so full of ourselves because we are so beautiful, because we still have that sex power?
Yes, and we don't have the older women to slap us in the face and tell us to get back in line. That character has vanished out of society. Vanished. Older women used to control the lives of the younger women in their families and in their orbit. Socially, their marital prospects, and they often did so with cruelty and
guilt and shame
and authoritarianism.
Yeah.
But older women kept all the worst tendencies that all young people have. They kept them in check. There should be a happy medium. I'm not saying your grandmother should be able to sell you off in marriage.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But
for a few
certainly
cows.
To check your attitude. Yeah, nobody checks nobody checks kids' attitudes. Like this starts in primary school. Like, don't talk to me with that tone of voice, young lady. I mean, I was told that many times. I remember. Both my grandmothers were quite mild mannered, but the respect for them was immense. No, you never would have talked to turn to your grandmother. I'm sure you were the same. But I did have a family friend, and she was this British woman who'd had this extraordinary life. Like, she was fought in the resistance and against the Nazis. Anyway, she was quite eccentric, and she was very upper class British, and she was constantly criticizing me when I was like 11 and telling me, speak properly. Like, she was always like badgering me because I wasn't like standing up straight, or my hair was in my face, or I wasn't enunciating. I was like terrified of her, but like I just took it, because like, that is a very necessary learning process. Young people and children are not the font of all wisdom. They need older people to say, this, you need to do the following things better. Here's your list of improvements, and then maybe you'll get some of my respect. It's the other way around, and it's been the other way around since millennials. Gen X were raised with more of that. Millennials were not, and in the Anglo world, they were raised to be either perfect trophy, like perfect little kids, or they were diagnosed. They have this condition, they have that condition. Everyone was making excuses for their behavior. Everyone's making excuses for their inability to focus. Like, that is really hard for. That's not it's not a given that is a positive. for children's development.
If you enjoy this clip and you would like to support the show, all you have to do is press subscribe. And to watch the full conversation, you can go right here. I'll see you there.